Once again, good morning. Welcome. My name is Neil Esty. I'm the Associate Director for the Center for Finance, Law, and Policy. On behalf of the Center, as well as our co-sponsor, the Frederick S. Pardee Center for the Study of the Longer Range Future, we'd like to once again thank you and welcome you to this event. This is we're happy to have you here to address what is a critical issue in economic development and is emerging as one of the most important areas in that field. We are particularly honored to have as our guest today the Governor of the Central Bank of Bangladesh, Governor Rahman. He will be introduced in a few moments and will deliver his presentation at that time. But before we do that, we're going to have a few members of our task force speak. As you may have noticed, there's a report published on the table out back. If you have not grabbed one on your way in, please do so on your way out. This task force was assembled to look at the impact of remittances specifically in a post-conflict context and the impact it has on human security, which includes economic development. So we're going to have a few folks from the task force speak in just a minute, but before I introduce those, we'll have the two conveners and the lead researcher. There are a few other members from the task force here. Unfortunately, most of the contributors are spread across the world, which is good for the quality of the paper. Unfortunately, it means a number of folks were not able to attend. Everyone that worked on the task force report, can you please just raise your hand so those can see? So we have a good number of folks here. And we have a total of probably about 15 contributors to the report itself. So real quickly, just so you know who will be speaking from the task force, we have John Harris, who is on the faculty at the Department of Economics right here at Boston University. Professor Harris has a long and distinguished career researching development economics, including matters of human migration. His article titled Migration, Unemployment, and Development, a Two-Sector Analysis, was actually selected by the American Economic Review as one of the 20 most influential articles it published during its first 100 years. And his article and his name is in good company with a number of Nobel Prize winners in economics. And that paper is available for download on our website. If you go to the remittance page, it is there. It's a fantastic article. So he'll be speaking as one of the conveners of the task force. We'll also have Don Terry will say a few words. Don is one of the foremost authorities on remittances, managed the Multilateral Investment Fund for 16 years, which exists with the Inter-American Development Bank. If you know about development in Latin America, you're familiar with these organizations. He also teaches a microfinance course at the School of Law right here at BU. For those of you that are students, that course is in the spring, plenty of time to sign up. But most importantly, he's also a senior fellow for our center as well as a member of our board of advisors. And last but certainly not least is Davy Rodema-Taylor. She took the role as the lead researcher on this project. She's an anthropologist by training, holds a PhD from Brandeis University, but her focus has been on economic development issues through the lens of an anthropologist. She's researched extensively on matters such as participatory development planning, microfinance, community governance. She's also taught legal and economic anthropology and sustainable development. So we could not have had a more qualified person to lead the research on this effort and really help develop the human aspect of this critical issue. So we'll welcome all three of them together, after which Con Hurley, the center's director, will formally introduce the governor so that he may deliver his address. So join me in welcoming the task force at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Governor. We're honored to have you here today. I just wanted to say a few words about the task force and the idea. I've been working on migration issues for many years, and then increasingly economists have been aware of the importance of remittance flows from migrants overseas back to home, and indeed there's increased recognition of the overall importance of remittances as a financial flow, far exceeding all international aid put together, and for poorer countries also far exceeding the amounts of private international investment. So it's a huge resource. It's hard to measure it, and indeed it has not been widely recognized until more recently, and there's been groups at the World Bank and the fund and an academic interest in the role of remittances as a whole. but it struck us that indeed there's a particular category that's important that hasn't received much attention. We've got a number of countries that have fallen into civil war, into failed state, to disintegration of various forms. And then there's generally some form of a internationally brokered peace process that emerges. And the usual steps are that you have then an international conference on the donors to say, how does aid flow go? There's usually a conference to try to see, can we attract some private investment flows? There's usually work on constitutions, truth and reconciliation, a whole set on the political side of trying to bind up wounds and to create a viable new state that can survive. The biggest resource any of those countries have is the diaspora. The earnings potential, the knowledge, the skills, the connections of the people who had left during the periods of disintegration. And yet I'm not aware yet of one of these peace conferences or rebuilding plans that really takes account of the potential of the remittances in the reconstruction process. So we thought it would be useful to start looking at it. And as you'll see from the report, we have some guesses about how large these are. The only thing I can say for certain is whatever we're measuring is a huge undercount, because remittances go through so many flows, and basically we're able to pick up what goes through formal financial systems, plus a little bit of adjustment from the national accounts work. But it's individuals bringing back funds individually. There's the whole role of informal networks, the Hawala systems, and Davey will speak a little bit more about the importance of those. But we know that the amounts are large. Now, the issue and the questions we want to ask, well, how much is being sent? By whom? Through what channels? And what is the effect? And so we're blind men and women trying to tell you about the elephant there. We've got little bits and pieces of snatches, and we hope that this leads to a more systematic, serious research project over the coming years. I'd just say a couple of things. It's not uncommon to hear people say, well, yeah, people who are overseas, they send money back, but it's just to their families, and that just supports consumption, and that's not development. When I hear that, I get a little bit angry, because, first of all, the main purpose of development is to raise living standards. And people who are in a devastated situation, who have lost assets, where government services have ceased to exist, obviously desperately need support for their consumption levels. And then there are the indirect effects. If people are starting to have consumption, that creates then additional demand for locally produced goods and services and has the obvious kind of multiplier effects. But secondly, we have a few surveys that have been done in developing countries. A couple, we have one the World Bank did in Sierra Leone, suggesting that a substantial part of remittances being received are going particularly for school fees and investment in education. And I don't like to think of that as just mere wasteful consumption. It's a crucial part of investment. There's another tip of the iceberg that it may be important, particularly for self-employed, informal sector people, for giving them the ability to buy some stock in trade, et cetera. So that's part of what we want to learn. But an obvious point is that indeed the resources could be leveraged more effectively if they were coming, at least in part, through financial systems, and financial systems that indeed would channel funds for development purposes. So these are some of the issues, and particularly in some of our informal interviews with Liberians in New England, I've become aware of a process of really creating little NGOs, grassroots NGOs. For instance, there's a group of Liberians living in Providence, connected back with hometown associations that have recently raised money to create a youth skills training center. And people have donated computers. There's money going back to build facility. They're using some Liberian college students going back also for technical assistance. That doesn't show up as remittances. There's also issues of alumni groups raising money to rebuild schools and do other kinds of projects. So we've been calling these co-development schemes. And again, they're not well recognized, but we think it may be important that as well as the channel to immediate family members and immediate kin, there's also this community philanthropy going of raising resources in the diasporas. Now, unless I give too optimistic a story, one of the really political issues that's interesting. The people in the diaspora who have the highest earnings are the ones who are able to come to North America and Europe, and they send a lot more home. You ask, who are the ones that are able to get into North America and Europe? The answer is it's people with skills. And they have relatively high earnings, and they indeed remit substantial amounts back. At the same time, you have to ask, who are the people from these distressed countries that had the skills and the training and the education, their ability to negotiate these, the industrialized countries? And the answer is they don't come from the poorest. And in some cases, and Liberia is a good example here, you find the relatively better off privileged group that had the connections, have the educated migrants. They are sending money back home, but it's going back through channels, so it's not the poorest, but indeed the relatively privileged who are receiving a disproportionate amount of these remittances, and that may, and I say may, actually exacerbate the underlying tensions that led to the Civil War in the beginning. So that's the political repercussions, that these aren't just totally totally anonymous flows, or that all the effects are neutral. So those are the things we found, the issues we want to raise, and we hope we're able to work on them further in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Don Terry. I've been working on this issue of remittances for about 15 years now, not as long as Professor Harris knew about them. And I want to say that today, to my knowledge, this is really the first time in those 15 years that anybody has taken a look at. Professor Harris said, well, we'd like to be able to be more systemic about it, and we will be, I hope, in the future. But this is the first time that this issue has been looked at through the lens of post-conflict countries, which I think is very important, because if anybody in this room, let me give you a partial list of countries maybe that maybe you've heard of. Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. I can start throwing in some Asian countries as well if you want, but my mind right now is on the Middle East and on Africa, Sri Lanka. If you're concerned, interested, worried, whatever the word is, about countries like that, by definition, when you have problems as those countries have had, people leave. People always leave for better opportunity, but when you've got a conflict situation, whether it's armed conflict or ethnic or religious strife, people leave. And they send money back home to their families. And just to underscore what Professor Harris said, the amount of money that goes back is a multiple not only of official development assistance, ODA for the inside group, it's a multiple of ODA plus FDI, foreign direct investment, combined. There's not a lot of foreign direct investment going into post-conflict countries. And the amount of remittances that goes back dwarfs the amount of official development assistance. So if you're interested in stabilizing these unstable countries, why don't you think about figuring out how to leverage the major resource that's coming into those countries? And so that's what we're talking about here. Professor Harris says, we don't know for sure it's true. The official amount of remittances to developing countries in the world is estimated off of their official numbers by the World Bank to be somewhere between $415 to $430 billion in this year. The actual numbers are much higher, and the actual numbers to these post-conflict countries, which we estimate to be around 50 in the world. These 50 countries, my best guess, after having done this stuff for about 15 years, is conservatively about $150 billion a year. 150. And this underscores, again, the commitment to sending money back home to people who are living under very, very difficult circumstances. And difficult is a euphemism, I guess. So those are the parameters. And I think this is not just the academic, it is the political imperative to figure out how to leverage these flows. Let me just segue into one more thing, which is financial inclusion. Every head of state, when they take office, makes a speech, and I think sincerely, that talks about we want our people to have access to financial institutions. We want more financial inclusion. And then they turn it over to the finance ministers and the heads of the central bank, and it usually doesn't happen. So I am very pleased, and I'm even more pleased after having spent an hour over breakfast, and I'm going to stop talking here because I want to have as much time as possible to listen some more to the head of the Central Bank of Bangladesh, who is, without question, the one central bank head in the world who is pushing financial inclusion the most. And so we're all honored to have the governor here today, and I'm just going to want to listen some more to him. But remember, if you are interested in bringing stability and economic development to countries which don't have it now, then you ought to be thinking about how to leverage the number one flow that's going into those countries. Thanks very much.
Thank you everybody for being here today, and I would like to give you a brief overview of what went into the research process, and also to briefly outline a few findings of the report. And the task force studied a range of issues central to conflict-induced remittance systems and to leveraging remittances for post-conflict development. And the one-year interdisciplinary research project involved participants from different academic institutions from US as well as abroad, and included an establishment of an extensive online research database of hundreds of resource materials, as well as organizing and conducting a collaborative two-day conference in November 2012. As already pointed out, remittance flows into post-conflict contexts have been very sparsely researched so far. However, remittances can have a great importance as a gateway to greater financial inclusion, while also providing crucial post-conflict stability. Certain recent changes in the world, like accelerating human capital flows, and also the recurrent and increasingly fragmentary nature of violent conflict, render the study of remittance dynamic and the role in combating poverty increasingly relevant to all aspects of human security and peace building. However, the improved integration of remittance flows into post-conflict development still poses considerable challenges. The task force report outlines some main areas of these challenges, as well as suggestions for further research and policy applications. And I would like to look at briefly at the main three areas of the findings of the report. First area deals with the importance of remittances to the issues of financial inclusion, which is very crucial to post-conflict development, as already pointed out by John Harris and Don Terry. Post-conflict situations are characterized by an endemic breakdown on central governance and banking institutions, and most conflict-induced remittances are transferred through informal channels that are embedded in existing social institutions and networks. These informal channels, however, may be hidden and obscure, At the same time, remittances have a potential to become a major tool for financial inclusion by establishing durable links between formal and informal sectors and building on local coping mechanisms, entrepreneurship, and creativity. Although formal banking infrastructures are often lacking in post-conflict situations, it was noted in the report studies that modern informal remittance transfers can involve complex connections to diverse formal sector institutions, and the so-called traditional informal modes of transfer, like hundi and hawala, draw upon complex global networks of financial nodes of varying degrees of formality and are therefore characterized by an increasing hybridity and mixing of formal and informal elements. Rather than focusing on the often arbitrary formal-informal opposition, the report findings call more attention to the processes of institutional evolution and development, whereby remittance institutions may evolve from other social institutions and practices, and then in turn support adding on other functions like savings, credit, business investment, and so on. To expand access to remittance services in post-conflict contexts, the report suggests exploring partnerships with a wide range of institutions of financial inclusion, including microfinance groups, credit unions, cooperative marketing associations, post offices, and mobile banking platforms, but also local rotating savings and credit groups and economic groups. The use of new ICTs may help rural poor benefit from money transfer services in novel and productive ways. Secondly, the project revealed the relevance of diaspora networks and co-development, as already also pointed out by Professor Harris. It established the increasing role of diaspora networks and migrant associations in post-conflict co-development initiatives, and also the growing importance of social remittances in the form of skills, knowledge, and expertise. And it also found that fostering co-development projects among the diaspora can be a very important element of post-conflict reconstruction. It suggested more attention to the increasingly diverse organizations of the diaspora that enable migrants to participate in co-development projects, including various hometown associations, ethnic, religious, and professional associations, non-governmental bodies, diaspora investment and development groups, and so on. Although those organizations are increasingly prevalent, knowledge about their activities and the impact of collective remittances to the development of migrant home countries is still very scarce, and additional research is needed. Post-conflict diasporas can be very diverse and include war refugees, as well as economic migrants and wage earners. There is a need for more research on patterns of remitting also from the sender's point of view, including motivations for remitting and family, generational, and gender dynamics involved in sending and receiving remittances. Individual remitting patterns and behaviors are an important area for future research. And the third topic area that the report focused on deals with the impacts of remittances on local resilience and human security. The nature of violent conflict has profoundly changed in the recent decades, becoming more decentralized, fragmentized, and continuously recurrent, involving diverse forms of criminality and terrorism. Violent conflict and poverty are also increasingly interwoven and contribute to each other. Attention is needed to increasing connectedness of diverse aspects of human vulnerability that may disrupt peace and development. The human security approach calls attention to the role of remittances in building local resilience through reliance on a broad range of local institutions and with attention to individual and community empowerment and participation. The report studies reveal that as part of the broader framework of financial inclusion, remittance institutions should not be considered separate from areas like environment, health, education, and gender. More research is needed into remittances as an adaptive mechanism to multiple simultaneously occurring environmental and social crises. The role of remittances in increasing human resilience in post-conflict contexts is therefore an increasingly important object of study. Thank you.
Good morning. Before I introduce our distinguished guest, I wanted to just take this moment to thank the people that had a role in this task force and this marvelous report that Don Terry held up for you. First of all, John Harris, who has devoted decades of his life to this and related topics. The report and all of the work of the task force clearly reflects not only your research, but your values as well, and for that we are extremely grateful. Davey, you are the sinew that held this group together. This has been, we didn't just write this last week. It's a year, more than a year-long effort, and your intellectual guidance was immeasurable. Neil was the chief operating officer of this report, I think you could say. He made sure the deadlines were met and the trains ran on time, and but for his organizing skills, we would not be here today. But principally, Don Terry just mentioned his 15 years in the industry, primarily at the Inter-American Development Bank. Don is is recognized as the world's expert on remittances. It was Don that brought this idea to us over a year ago. So we owe Don, who is a senior fellow at the Center for Finance, Law and Policy, a great deal of gratitude, both for the idea and for helping us execute on it. And as I think you're getting the impression, today is just the beginning. I brought with me Dr. Rahman's bio, and since I had not met him before this morning, I was prepared to read segments of it to you. But having met him, I think my doing that would not do justice to him. Those of us that gathered for breakfast this morning were extremely impressed, not just by his passion, but by the actual things that he has done on the ground to improve the life conditions of the people of Bangladesh. I worked at the Central Bank of the U.S., the Federal Reserve System, for 8 years myself, and I am humbled, quite frankly, to hear the energetic, forward-leaning things that you are doing in Bangladesh for your people. And I think all of us at breakfast came away with the idea that we can somehow take your ideas and deploy them in other contexts. Yesterday, President Obama nominated Janet Yellen to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. Would that Janet Yellen were here today to listen to Governor Rahman, I think she would go away as impassioned and created and with creative ideas as we did this morning. Now, Governor Rahman, you've devoted your life to improving the condition of the poor, to gender sensitivity, to environmental concerns. We share those issues with you. Later today, you're going to be going across the river to that institution that we dare not speak its name. And there are a lot of very intelligent people over there at Harvard. Excuse me. And they will tell you so. Right? Now, you and I have a lot of symmetries in our lives. You have written 49 books. In my life, I think I have read 49 books. Actually, it's 48. I'm planning to finish the 49th one before the holidays. But I have this offer to you, Governor. As we go forward and try to implement some of the recommendations that are in a report, and now supplemented by some of your ideas that you shared with us over breakfast, please consider our center, the Pardee Center, and special thanks to Tony Janettos, who is here. We haven't recognized him yet. Please consider our centers in this university as your foundation for your work going forward, because we would certainly welcome that challenge and that opportunity to work with you. So enough from me. You're in for a treat. And he just got off the plane last night, and he went to Cambridge, and he immediately took ill. So that should be a good harbinger for our partnership going forward. Governor?
Thank you all for your kind words. It's very difficult to read and spend some time on academic things, particularly when you have so much on your plates. What I'll do today, I will make brief comments on your report initially, not much as expected. I want to quickly move to the Bangladesh scenario because you have already done what you have done. So if I will make an attempt to add on, if I can do that, this is that will be also good for you people, so that you can then later you can refocus some of those areas as well. What impressed me most about the report, that you have, as someone, probably John has already said, the development is much more complex and also multidimensional. People always talk about growth rates, which I also do, but I never forget that there are many other elements, which need to be looked at. And I think remittance is one area where you have all the dimensions, in both growth and also human dimension. And I think people don't talk about human dimensions and the kind of, the human tragedies in a post-conflict kind of situation, and even in a normal situation. I think the lot of pains, if you really face the the poverty, the cards of poverty, and how to get out of it. I think that's a very important kind of impression I got from the report, and particularly someone who is not only a governor, who was not only an academic or used to be an academic. I want to come back as soon as I can, in a company like yours. I have seen, poverty from eyeball to eyeball. I have seen that Royal Bengal tiger. So I have faced it. I have come out of it. So I know exactly what it means. That's why I thought your effort in taking this multidimensional approach was indeed a very heroic one, and I want to congratulate you all for that. Secondly, there are some very innovative ideas in the report, which I'll just mention one or two of that. Particularly your idea of social remittance. I thought that was fantastic. It's not only the money you send the ideas, you send culture, you send technology, and you send the societal kind of behavior. So that element, which is more of a social capital, that is very important. And I'm so glad that you have mentioned social remittance as one of the elements you have looked at. That's something. Secondly, you have also looked at socio-techno kind of remittance, and there the technology, the transfer through technology, how is changing the entire gamut of development. I'm a great fan of Rabindranath Tagore. As you know, many of you may have heard about him. He was the first Nobel laureate from Asia as a poet, but he wrote a lot on social development. In fact, I have written a couple of books in my own language on him, but right now I'm writing a book on English on him. I call it Humane Development in the light of thoughts of Rabindranath Tagore. This will be coming out. There he says that technology is a must for transformation of a society, of a country. But he gives a very interesting examples. That's more important. He said, you can have indigenous lights with the, veranda seeds of the oil coming from the veranda seeds, and you can have a light of your own. But that's everybody desires that they should come out of that darkness, and should have electricity. But the next line is very important. Electricity we must have, but we must have it for all. That's very important. Someone talking about that, and again he's talking about that. We at that moment there was not much technology when he was. He said, of course we run with the bullock carts, but that's not the end of it. all of us must strive to go for the motor vehicles. And again, we must see that everybody gets into that. So that kind of inclusiveness he's talking about on the and use of technology. And I thought remittance is one area where technology can be very, very gainfully used, and you can bring in more people into the system. So with that kind of, I would say, socio-techno kind of remittance, as you mentioned about, I thought that's very fantastic. And so you also mentioned about the post-cultural, post-conflict cultural kind of tensions in the societies like Sri Lanka or El Salvador, or in parts of Pakistan, and the kind of tensions they're going through the life. I thought this was a very humane report, and I thought it's a very good report. But again, there are all threats of economic stability and development also in that report, and one can really go forward from that report. And what I'll try today, to look from I would say, a socio-economist point of view and take it forward in the context of Bangladesh, that how we have transformed some of these informal remittances into formal remittances through the financial systems, and then made it one of the most cost-effective way of transferring the remittances and bringing people together using new technologies. We have with us, the CEO of bKash, which is the largest mobile financial services in the country. He too can share one or two words how we are thinking and taking this forward. So with these few words, let me go into the report itself. Is this the one? Yep. So we start with, I think some of you have already covered this, but I'll be very quick and move pretty fast. The diaspora, again, the concept of diaspora was very important in the entire report. I thought diaspora becomes very useful in a conflict situation. We too have gone through that process in 1971, as you may have, some of you may remember how traumatic experience that was. And then post-conflict development also, this diaspora played a very crucial role. Now we are using diaspora for a very dynamic role. I, as a central bank governor, I'm putting on board, how to bring in more foreign direct investment through diaspora. So that is even more fascinating, But initially, diaspora played a very important role. The global diaspora, actually, remittances is as good as projected to be 550 billion, 13, and over 700 by 2016. Again, diaspora remittance flows to developing countries are projected to reach 414 billion in 2013 and 540 billion by 16. And the external viability gains from diaspora remittances already well exceed those from ODA for development. Somebody has already mentioned about that. Just to give you some example that this is how larger than even the foreign exchange reserves, this diaspora, and particularly in Tajikistan is dozens times higher than that, and even in Bangladesh is much higher than what we gain. So the task force report, as I said, I have mentioned about task force report already. It's a pioneering study of challenges and many complexities in the remittance studies. One of the findings is sustaining diaspora remittance channels to beneficiaries in conflict-ridden countries, and in preventing falling of these into hands of the warring factions, leading to prolonging of the conflicts. I thought this is one area one need to be very careful, and you have brought it out quite well, the downside risk of that kind of, and you mentioned about Liberia and other countries, that how they misuse it, sometimes. At areas of policy intervention and further research, you have also mentioned about it. Its report quite plausibly finds informal channels unavoidable by the hundi or the hawala you mentioned about, and often only feasible ones in conflict-ridden countries. But the informal nature of these channels makes AML CFT vigilance impracticable. I, as a central bank governor, to tell that is a bit dangerous. But I thought, let's not overdo it. Let's do it proportionate let's do it on size, let's do it on amount, so that smaller amounts you can avoid, and so you can even continue. And that's exactly what we are doing in our country. Even in mobile financial services, we have total control, but we give some kind of concessions for the smaller ones, and the number of transactions per day or something like that. We have brought in that kind of innovation so that we can face it. But even then, we keep an eye on that, so that some people don't misuse this. Informal channels are also prone to abuse for capital control evasion, a major concern in developing countries. Many people tell me that poor people are taking in money and the rich are bringing it out. That's what the remittance and all of it. So it's a I don't know where is the balance, but that's something one need to. And I think the rich are more using the hawalas and the hundis than the poor. That's something. And a formal. That's why the formal channels are therefore the way forward upon restoration of stability after conflict episodes. I think that's the only way out. Bangladesh is a steadily growing developing economy. The 1971 War of Liberation, our last major conflict episode, and Boston was a center of around that time. You remember all the academics and all fought it out. From Boston. I still remember, I was young at that time, but a lot of academics who were working here in Boston, in Harvard University, they all participated in that, diaspora, and they fought it out for Bangladesh. Diaspora remittances through formal channels, major factor behind stable growth and external sector viability of the economy. As someone mentioned about that, if you really see the balance of payment, to be stable, I think remittance in many of the countries is the only, important element of it. And we got our balance of. We are the only country in the region in Bangladesh. The Bangladesh balance of payment is running surplus. That's mainly because of the remittance and the exports. These are again poor people's contribution into balance of payment. We are running current account surplus, for about a decade or so, while even our mature neighbors finding it very difficult, and our currency is one of the strongest in the regions, and for many years, and we are doing pretty well on that stability front, actually. Again, Bangladesh authorities proactively fostering formal banking channels for diaspora remittance inflows. We have deliberately taken policies so that remittance go through the formal channels. We have allowed the banks to have their own correspondent relations, more correspondent relations. We have allowed the banks to have their own exchange houses so that they can collect the money and then pass it on to the banks. And we also have developed a lot of partnerships, particularly development partnership with MFIs, with the technologically savvy, the telcos. So it's partnerships, all the partnerships, and this is working pretty well, and money is going faster than anywhere else, and a very cost-effective way. I'll come back to that. So the formal channel is the way forward. It's one where the inflow of Bangladesh is through a bank, while other handlers at source and delivery ends may be non-banks. But again, as I said, it's a partnership. If you can develop a partnership with the formal channels, you can handle it far better, and we have been doing pretty well there. Look at the Bangladesh diaspora, around 7 million globally, and their remittance inflows, how it is increasing almost every year. I'm only mentioning about the last 4 or 5 years where I was in charge, but things started improving far earlier. But I think over the last 5 years, change is quite phenomenal. It's 14.5 billion last year. I think this year it will be 16 plus or something like that, actually, which is pretty high, compared to many countries, and it's moving pretty fast. It's around, when I joined as a governor, it was around 6% of the GDP. Now it's 11%, and over the last 4 years, 5 years, it has gone up to 11% of the total GDP, and growing at double-digit annual rates since 1980s, all the time double digits. Off late, there is a bit of a slowdown, but even still then, it's still positive, actually. Over past 4 years, the average growth was 11% in Bangladesh, and around 7.1% in other Asian countries. So it's compared to our peers, I think we are doing far better in terms of, this is a figures I have already shown you. Now look at where are the remittance coming, mostly, as I said, this is a remittance. Most of the remittance really come from the Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE. These are the countries who do most of the remittances. But we all now have also opened up in other areas, Malaysia, and Singapore. Those are the other countries. India, of course, is a great source of informal remittance. There is a lot of migrant workers to India, which are very non-informal economic migrants, and they send a lot of money, but again, not always get reflected in the figures. But it has been a very useful one. What is good about Bangladesh? That means while the numbers of workers not increasing at the level, but the remittance is increasing. That only tells that either the remittance has become very transparent or channelized, or the more skills are going out, skilled workers going out. Could be that, but ours is essentially non-skilled workers based remittance program. Again, remittance has given us a lot of external sector viability. Remittances have contributed significantly for growing foreign exchange reserves in Bangladesh. Now these reserves stand at a historical high of 16 billion. In fact, yesterday I checked, it is 16.6 billion already, which is as good as almost about 5.5 months of import, which is, we are catching up many of our neighbors who are 6 months, so this was 2 months only so this is something which is going pretty fast. And despite being a trade deficit country, Bangladesh has been enjoying a positive balance in current account during the last 5 years because of the favorable impact of. We are the only country in the region, as I said, we are running current account surplus of 3 billion plus, and that gives us an extra strength on our currency. And our currency is the strongest in the region, and I find it extremely difficult to keep the rate. So I need to mop it up from the market. I just yesterday I bought about $71 million from the market, and that needs a lot of monetary policy, instruments. As you can understand, you have to give the bonds to the bank, to get the money. They don't get the cash, so that I don't also overheat the monetary program which we have set. And so the inflation needs to be taken care of. One of the downside of the, too much flow of remittance is that it might stoke inflation. So I thought we have to be very careful in maintaining the in a hardcore monetary policy. You need to mop up some of these currencies so that you remain within the monetary targets, and that exactly which we do. We are doing it pretty well, and over the last 6 months, consistently the remittance is coming down. The remittance today is about 7%. This was about 13% 1.5 years back. So I think it's coming down consistently, and that's something is still happening, and that's a good thing. And again, a positive current account balance means less dependence on potentially destabilizing short-term capital inflows. You know better, what is short-term capital. Just a word of tapering has destabilized the entire, in a world, and our biggest neighbors, Indian, had it. It's such a difficulty they were in, just because of the word of ban. So I thought, we also take short-term loans, but normally I chair the committee which really brings in a lot of investment, but I don't encourage a lot of short terms. At least 1 year or plus or 4 years. I chair that, and I never approve which is very short term. So that's how it's coming out. But we still do some of the 6 months kind of program for export support and all that. But again, we really are very careful about short term inflows, because that can be destabilizing. Stability of the exchange rate, as you know, I have already mentioned about it. Avoiding potentially painful depreciation such as recently experienced in India and Brazil and many other countries. efficiency enhancing steps taken to drive down remittance costs. I think this is important for your report. This is coming down. Off-branch remittance delivery to beneficiaries through smart card, mobile phone banking introduced. As I mentioned about, our mobile bank services is growing at leaps and bounds. Over the last 6 months alone, the mobile bank accounts have more than doubled. It's now about 7.5 million bank accounts we have opened. And this is happening 20% per month. That kind of improvement. And again, our mobile financial services is bank-led. It's completely under regulation of the central bank. And that's why, people have a lot of confidence in this kind of system, and it is going pretty fast. And people even they have generic, ideas. They don't call mobile. They say I'm Bikashing the money. No, that's Bikash is one of our big financial services. All the maid servants working in the families, they all Bikash. They send the money to their families through that. I'm making it a point that all banks come forward to help me getting a mobile bank account for all the remittance, all the RMG workers, about 4 million of them. If they all start sending their money through the mobile financial services back into the rural areas, they cannot go out every month, give the money to their moms. If they can do it every day, if they want. And that's what is happening. And that is improving the quality of life, as you said, bringing in the consumption kind of stability. The consumption shocks are avoided so that they are getting the money every day. So that's how, life is, and this money is very secure because it's only it's not cash as such being transferred. They're getting the SMS and they're getting the money. And we have developed a very interesting system, agent-based system. Even all this private-public partnership is one of the best here. And I thought Remittance, both international and national, both are working pretty well. The bank branches, exchange houses, as I mentioned, in such countries collect remittance and transfer electronically to banks in Bangladesh. And from the banks, the mobile financial services or the MFIs, they take care of the next leg. It's a relay race. With the first leg, send it to the bank, and the bank. But again, together, it's very cost effective and also time efficient, actually. 37 banks have almost 1,084 drawing arrangements with 222 exchange houses all over the world. Delivery to beneficiaries in Bangladesh take place through bank branches, MFIs, post offices. We have digitized the post offices. The post offices now use mobile financial services and move pretty fast, actually. Again, and we regulate that part as well. And local agents in smart card mobile phone banking. And efficiency gains from collection and delivery arrangement using ICT has driven down cost of remittance. Bangladesh is now among the countries on some of the lowest remittance corridors. The best, I would say, the least cost kind of delivery systems we have developed. I'll just show you that Singapore to Bangladesh ranked the lowest cost based on $500 transfer. You see that? That's the one, only about $1. That's the transfer cost. And when you have UAE to Egypt, it's about $2. You can see that. And here, Singapore, Bangladesh ranks second lowest based on $200 transfer. So this is and we are improving every day. This transfers. You can see this MFS beyond money transfers. You only talk about money transfers, but as you said, this is much more than the money. It's a kind of the changes is bringing to the lives and the living conditions of the very poor. This is a case study, and if you go through this case study, this Majida, who is a typical beneficiary of a mobile financial service, how she works as she gets the social pension from the government, but she doesn't take it one day. She keeps it there and then mobiles it, or transfers it after a while when there is a larger amount, so that she can do something. And she feels that it's one of her pretty, she said that this has made my life so easy, and I can withdraw anytime I like, and I will wait until the next month and invest my money. That's how it brings in that kind. I think you should read this story. Microfinance loan repayments have already been started with the mobile financial services, and collections and disbursements are all taking place now. and labor-intensive sectors that are going to the remote outreach. Government employment generation program and safety network are getting the benefits of mobile financial services. Poverty alleviation program in ultra-remote areas, that is also getting the services. And M-commerce through more than 1,000 merchants. This is more important. It's a private sector-led growth in that sense. Actually, the merchants are becoming agents, and they are the ones who are taking it to the rural areas. And again, all the little amounts accumulate to provide large capital opportunities at a macro level to contribute to the country's economy, particularly the development of the rural areas. So it's all the small money, but if you put thousands of them together, it's a big base and the bank's stability of the deposit base is much stronger now. Given this. That's why I have made it bank-led, so that the bank gets the deposit, which will not be taken away. If you put a corporate, they might shift it, in any time, and banks it's very difficult. So I think it's a look at this. This is a program from the Bikash again, financial inclusion through mobile remittances. This is if you see that all the money, cash in, cash out. You can see that cash in is much more important, and people from Dhaka or the capital around, they're all sending money to the rural areas. See? It was other way around. People used to send money from the rural areas to the urban areas through banks. Now the bank is taking the initiative of sending out money to the rural areas. So it's a financial inclusion taking place, and also social equality also taking place. You'll be surprised. Over the last 1 decade or so, our Gini coefficient remained at 3.3 stable, in fact. And the consumption Gini is falling. And the rural income has tripled over the last 4-5 years alone. So this is happening mainly because of the programs like this and the rural inclusion program. Again, this is a very, very, the report also touched on this, and where do the remittances go, So many people would, of course, consumption is important. You should not, rule out the consumption. Is the initial use of remittance funds by the recipients. Loan repayments and home building and home renovation are also important cases initially. You can see big buildings in areas where the remittance really concentrate. All beautiful buildings, If the rich people make buildings, nobody bothers. But if the remittance, brings building, the economists will be very prone to say this is a non-productive expenditure they're making, But anyway, consumption is also important for improving the living standards and also their, mental satisfaction also. But again, that is the initial spot. But that's once they have done that initial one, then they go for the development or the productive kind of investment. In the second round, families may utilize remittances for investments in micro to medium enterprises such as grocery stores, poultry farms, beauty salons, fish hatcheries, small-scale agro-processing, hotels, restaurants. And this is the round, I think, that is more important for us from a development perspective. And we have a district called, Mymensingh. And this is an area which supplies about 70% of the total fish demand of the Bangladesh. And these are small ponds coming up, and most of these ponds really are small investments. And Remittance has put in a lot of contribution in that kind of investment. And I also encourage small and medium enterprises. Bangladesh has especially moves on SMEs, and there too Remittance is playing a very important role in SME finding. The next chart shows the growth of remittance relative to the growth of consumption and investment in Bangladesh. You can see this. Remittance, consumption, and investment. I think this will be important for any remittance studies. You can see that, consumption is of course higher, but the investment is touching. That's you look at that. It's almost going together. The consumption, as I said, initially they go for first more consumption, but they still continue to invest. But over there, after 11, 12, you can see that both consumption and investment are running together. And you can see that and as the remittance is increasing, also the investment is increasing in the rural areas. Investment moving faster than consumption in recent time, negating the Dutch disease phenomena in Bangladesh, because we have made it a point that they go for investment, Remittance impact this is a major driver of economic development. I will say inclusive economic development in Bangladesh. This is a major driver in Bangladesh. International regional evidence indicates remittance or the migrant dollars can substantially increase national income. And over the last 4 years alone, Bangladesh has doubled its per capita income. It's has entered into the first step of the lower middle income countries. $1,400. When I started my stint as a governor, it was around 600 or something like that. So it's literally doubled over the last 4 or 5 years. So this is a huge contribution they are making. Remittances augment consumption and investment and thereby have an important role in stimulating the economy. And research shows that remittance, even when not invested directly, can have an important multiplier effect, as you said. Multiplier impact is huge. And the rural, Bangladesh has been doing so well in terms of financial stability, mainly because of the very robust home market outside or the domestic demand which we are having because of this kind of activities. In addition, we have done from the central bank many other financial inclusion activities, which I'll be speaking in your neighbor's institute. I don't want to tell the name again, but I'll touch a few points here as well on that. Community solidarity is strengthened through this remittance, which you mentioned even in your report. The improved living standards, more investment in children's education, more spending possible on health care and social security, more investment in income generating activities such as formation of new SMEs in key areas like agro-processing and knitting rural and urban communities more closely together. Again, the larger investment taking place through the diaspora as well. We have given 3 non-resident Bangladeshi banks, and encouraged all the NRBs to set up their own banks. Bangladesh now have NRB banks, non-resident Bangladeshi banks. They have gone from New York, from Boston, and they have put in their money into a bank, and they run their own bank, and it's a different kind of bank. Mostly they facilitate remittance. They give loans to the people who come out and make their life. So that sort of the new things are happening in Bangladesh actually. Again, you can see the impact of the remittance, sustained high growth and moderate inflation. This is happening. The real GDP growth is over the last decade or so growing around 6+%. Even the last 4 years average is 6.2%. And again, ours is a very quality growth. As I said, the poverty is declining even faster than the growth. So that means only that we are not only building up cakes, we are sharing it. People are eating the cakes even from the rural areas and other areas. So that's it. And many, as I said, if you have a lot of remittance and a lot of these kind of activities, the inflation is supposed to go to the sky. But then we have maintained inflation. I'll not take the whole credit for it, but we are maintaining a very participatory monetary policy. And I talk to each of the stakeholders, think tanks, professors, metropolitan chambers, and primary stakeholders before I announce monetary policy every 6 months. So where should we? So we say, all right, we will be restrained monetary policy, but at the same time, we'll give a lot of money for agriculture, a lot of money for SME, a lot of money for productive sector. So we will discourage the speculative sectors and all that. So we are very clear about our monetary policy. It's a very participatory monetary policy. We every time give it, and that's why we could maintain the inflation. It has come down to 7% now. It is gone through that level. Last month it has come down to 7%. Look at the poverty decline. This is happening. More than 2% decline every month, every year. It's about it's say 31%, 210, but the latest figure is 26%. So it was about 70% when we became independent, as you know that. So it's a huge program, and the right side is extreme poverty. Even extreme poverty, this has gone down to about 15% now, and it's a matter of $3 billion. If we spend on, we can remove this extreme poverty, and we'll be doing that. And we are working on that. So this is a country which can boast of poverty reduction in such a coordinated way through our policies and through all that. Again, the government has also played a very interesting role. They have put 1/3 of the total budget goes for health and education and social expenditures as well, social safety net. So that they have been also doing a good job, and they have not gone bizarre on the budget deficit. The only we allowed around 4% of the fiscal deficit only, and I came out strongly when they wanted to cross the bridge. I said, no way, I'll give you the money. The central bank will close the tap if you want. So they had to keep it down. So 4% of the Indians have about 8%, and they are having so much difficulty in maintaining the stability of the currency. But we went out of the way and put our rein so that the budget deficit remains low. And again, look at the significant social indicators. You just look at the progress we are making. Fertility rate has come almost replacement level. It's about 2.2, but it will be reaching pretty fast the replacement level. Infant mortality rate, it has all over the last just 2 decades. You can see what happened to the figures. Life expectancy is around 70 years now, which 4 years higher than Indians. I'm telling to tell that. So it's a much bigger story. Malnutrition prevalence has come down, adult literacy rates has improved, and made in Bangladesh innovations like microcredit, non-formal education, oral rehydration therapy, low-cost birth mat, and contributed to the improvements of this growth. And well-rooted government NGO development partnership with relatively right regulatory footprint also contributed. As I told you in the morning, I have allowed 5,000 million taka directly going from the central bank to the biggest organization of non-government organization called BRAC, refinance at a bank rate, not through a bank, directly to that organization for providing loans to the tenant farmers, the sharecroppers, the wretched of the earth. They don't have any collateral, they don't own any land, but nobody gives them any bank loan. I said, this is a sector I'll touch. And I called in a BRAC, I said, give me a project. So they gave me a project. I took to my board and I explained to them that these are the people who will have a net inclusion of the financial services. At the same time, they will make a big impact on agricultural production. And at the end of the day, over the last 3-4 years, now 500,000 families are benefiting 20,000 plus loans from that. And it's a very innovative model they are following. It's not like normal MFIs. This is a group of 25 to 30. 50% of them are women. And this money, they take and spend for their agriculture and agriculture-related expenditures, and they return in 3 installments. Like on the first installment for first crop, after first crop, second after second crop, and another 1/3 on a monthly installment, so that they don't forget to pay. Actually, so that's kind of innovations we have developed, and this is working pretty well. And you can see the results we are finding. So what are the policy steps we have taken to smoothen remittance generating immigration? Government to government and government to business manpower export. Many a times, the private sector actually misuses the opportunity, and as an agent, they can be very, very harsh to the migrants. So we now in Malaysia at least, we have started doing government-to-government migration. So all the registrations take place through the online registrations, and then the government forwards the list to the government, but the private sector can take the delivery at a commission. But the government takes the lead, so that people are not affected. So about low-cost migration scheme established of state-owned. We have also a Pravasi Kullan Bank. That means migrant welfare bank we have developed, so that they take of the deposits of the workers abroad. Active search for new labor market overseas. We are diversifying our markets, and nationwide registration of immigrants and potential immigrants to match job interest with the job opportunities. And we use union level information kiosk we have developed. So we get all the information through that internet, and then we get this information, and we use that registration and then send it to the people. So it's all transparent. So these are the policy instruments we have taken. Separate savings instruments have been created for non-resident Bangladeshis, such as a non-resident foreign currency deposit, USD premium bond, wage earners development bond, and others. And these are all we operate as a central bank. You know, we work with the government, get the permission, but we operate. And our exchange houses and others, they also do investment in those terms. Actually, you know, many of the NRBs are investing on those market. Actually, you know, on the bond market. Investment incentives have been provided to NRBs to boost productive utilization of remittance, such as encouraging public-private partnerships, tax holidays, and tax exemption in investment to boost investment by NRBs. As I said, I have given banks. I chair as an investment committee chair. I have allowed NRBs to buy helicopters, airlines. You know, these are all hotels. They're all coming. Diaspora going there and investing. You know, and we are encouraging that to happen. Actually, you know. Special economic zones are particularly attractive destination for NRB investment. We are working on a separate diaspora, special economic zone just for the diaspora and NRB. So this will be another attractive kind of proposition. And a commercially important person, we call this diaspora commercially important persons, and we give them the designation, and special citizen facilities are given to immigrant or NRB wage earners to encourage remittance. So they have a card. If they move on to the airport, they just show the card. They get a first line. First track. That sort of things we are innovating, and it's working very well. But again. These are some of the issues of topical relevance for you, maybe, diaspora remittance. Overly burdensome AML CFT drills on exchange houses handling diaspora remittances, causing refusal of banks in US and UK to maintain accounts for them. This is something you know better. And I think you as an expert, you should tell that these are small people. They don't really do much harm, actually. And the central bank is having an eye on it. In fact, I have written to the House of Commons in London, and I have helped mobilize a campaign of the members of the parliament in UK, so that they are working for this diaspora. So that's how we really said. And I said, I as a central bank governor, I take full responsibility for AML drills. So why do you worry so much? On this. So that's how we are trying to do it. I think you here also, I think the banks are overdoing it, because they were fined for large AML failure. But here, the smaller people are suffering for that. It is creating worrisome hurdle for diaspora migrants and sending subsistence money to dependents. It may also be self-defeating, creating the perverse outcome of fund flow diversion to informal channel in easier reach of MLTF influences. So it can be self-defeating, as I said, and it's not addressing the right issues, as you mentioned, even in your report indicated that, Bangladesh diaspora community leaders may like to engage with host country authorities about it, and we are doing it in many countries. Diaspora remittance inflows contributed a lot in Bangladesh crossing of lower middle income country. I mentioned about it. Warm welcome awaits the diaspora's role in reaching the next goal to upper middle income group GNI threshold by 2030 with FDI, FPI expertise and know-how. We are really dreaming of a Bangladesh which will be upper middle income by 2030, and by 2050 we want to be as good as you, as an advanced country. That dream, I thought remittance probably will play that role.
Well, we'll be going down.
No. I want you to go up as well. No. And Bangladesh Bank, now you can feel that why Bangladesh Bank got involved in it. The Bangladesh Bank has already transformed itself into a developmental central bank. It's a champion of the inclusion, financial inclusion. And I have given you a report that how financial inclusion is leading us to the financial stability. Over the last 5 years, the global financial crisis going on, not a small influenza in Bangladesh economy. So we have maintained that kind of stability. And our economy is growing 6+. Our reserve trebled over this 6 months, and our currency is stable. So investment flowing. Our last year FDI grew by more than 30%. So it's all happening, and because of the very coordinated role, the central bank is playing a very proactive role, I would say, in terms of improving the monetary policies. And Bangladesh Bank would be happy to deepen these contacts with our diaspora program for facilitating their engagement in Bangladesh growth pursuits. Thank you so much. I think I have spoken a lot. Thank you very much. So if you want to take some questions.
Absolutely a fantastic presentation. I think really a model for how central banks can influence financial inclusion. We are a little bit short on time, but we will take a few minutes. The governor has graciously agreed to answer a couple of questions, so we'll take.
So
just
before that,
sure.
can I request my colleague, the CEO from Bikash, to just give 1 or 2 minutes?
Sure.
What the hell you are doing there?
It's an extremely humbling experience for you to you asking me to speak here. I mean, it's your show, not mine. I should not be standing here. Bikash is a mobile financial service. So in a poor country like Bangladesh, there are 100 mobile phones, and so each of these mobile phone is potentially a small little computer. So you can, the way you go to an ATM and you instruct an ATM. ATM is a robot. You instruct the robot that go to the server, extract some money for me. And the robot does that for you. But you're actually carrying one such robot in your pocket. It's a mobile phone. And there are 100 million such robots in the country like Bangladesh. I mean, I read it. I was a student here in the other side of the river, but not the other one. So in 1969, when man went to moon, the kind of computer NASA used, a $20 mobile phone has more processing power than those computers. So in that way, a country like Bangladesh has 100 million NASA computers in our pocket. How do you capitalize this thing? So when central bank came up with a vision that you can create this kind of inclusive financial service, then a company like Bikash was born. And Bikash is so where many forces came together. Gates Foundation came, local venture capitalists from the US came, then IFC came, and BRAC, the institution that Mr. Governor mentioned, they also came. So together, it's a company that is allowing people to do this financial service over the mobile phone. And just to give a sense of scale, we do around 25 million transactions in a month right now. Okay, and in each of those transaction ticket size only $25. Okay, so we reach many people, and that's what's the fun thing about the whole thing. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you one concluding point, and which Governor made it so well here, and then he's so eloquent into this thing. I go talk to my customers. So I met one person in a remote village in Bangladesh, and she said that this is fantastic. It's brought great value to my life, but my husband, my son, now they send money every week. But it's wonderful, but people shouldn't do this thing too much. And I was intrigued, and I said, what do you mean by this thing? And she said, well, I used to see my husband once a month, or my son once a month, but this technology comes and they make things more efficient, but I also miss them. So that human element of the thing, we should not miss that. And I think Governor is so eloquent in capturing that no matter what technology, what service we bring, fundamentally the human element is the most important thing. That's what we need to address. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the task force, and as you can see, there's some great folks to speak with after the event. Please feel free to meet with the task force and anyone else over more coffee afterwards. But we'll have time for just 2 quick questions. And in the interest of time,
I'm sorry I spoke much longer than
it was absolutely fascinating. Thank you. So 2 quick questions, please.
It's extraordinary that a central bank is acting like a development bank. So, do you have a budget? Does the government interfere with your decision about how much money to give to BRAC and to other development institutions? And in the American newspapers, when we read about this horrible factory collapse, it looked as if the government did not function very well, and to the extent it did, it represented the factory owners and didn't represent the people of Bangladesh. How do you avoid being captured by the large landowners or the banking system, et cetera? How do you manage to act as a development bank in the interests of the poorest people, the least politically powerful people, unlike other governmental institutions in Bangladesh?
You're right. Central bank is independent, we can run an independent monetary policy as long as we are within the monetary program. Say, for example, this year our M2 or the broad money growth will be around 17%. That's it. If as long as we remain in that target, nobody can touch any question. We always do that. But we have a board, which is a strong board. We have 3 government officials and 4 professors in the board, so we get it through. No problem. The remittance, particularly the refinance, we need to take it to the board. But we have a lot of operational flexibility. The way we want to do it, we can do it. Our regulation power is very important. And in our ordinance, the Act says that central bank can play a role of enhancing productive growth. So it's mentioned in there. So I take the advantage of that in a legal kind of principle, and I take it forward. And government now realizing that I'm playing a very complementary role, because a lot of this low inflation, high growth scenario would not have been possible if we didn't go for inclusive kind of financing and inclusive growth process. So government now values a lot, and they never disturbed me on that, actually. So on a Rana Plaza or the tragedy, it's a big tragedy, and it's a governance failure, no doubt about it. But we, from the regulator, we moved pretty fast because people have a lot of confidence on the regulator. So I moved pretty fast. On the very first day, I mentioned, I gave out in public as a central banker. I said, we will stand by the victim. So what I did, I collected about 1,000 million taka from the banks, from their corporate social responsibility fund, and then gave that money to the fund so that the victims immediately get attention, and then follow up with the volunteers. We are planning. The central bank is planning to give a reception or through a convention to all the hundreds of volunteers who work there, so that next time also the volunteers can come in. So we will give them, and if they need a job, I will take about some of them and put it to the banks. Each of the banks may be asked to give a couple of jobs, for that. So that will be another. Again, we have worked with the development partners. The Japan came out pretty strongly. The Japanese ambassador called me, said that, Dr. Rahman, we have a refinance scheme with you. Can we divert part of the fund for strengthening the buildings of these less compliant industries? I immediately agreed, and on the last week we signed the MOU. So what we'll do, we will give this refinance to the less compliant factories through the banks, so that they get at a lower rate of interest, so that they can improve their safety and again, no other central bank in the world would have ventured that, but we have done it, and thanks to Japanese government, they have come forward. But the Japanese said that if you can implement this 1,000, we will give you 10-fold more support on that. So others are also now coming to central bank, and that's how we are playing a proxy role. Sometimes the government cannot have that kind of machinery. Ours is a very intelligent boys and girls we work with, and they are quite forthcoming, and they take we have a separate department called green banking and CSR. So that department is taking the lead. We have also we're working with the fire brigade so that they have a better capacity to handle disaster. So we are planning to buy them larger ladders, small locators, and also improve their skills. So the central bank will take the lead in that as well. These are complementary kind of lead. Government probably will do after they learn from us. They may do much better, but we will be sending a signal. We cannot handle all the situations, but we will send a signals that we need to move in their directions.
One very short question over there, the gentleman right there.
Thank you. I'm Pablo Suarez with the Pardee Center at BU and also with the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. Last year, with your colleague Salim Hook, we organized an event at the Climate...
I remember now.
And you said many very interesting things about how you can invest not just in terms of post-shock, like this report refers to post-conflict, but also pre-shock in anticipation of things like a changing climate. Can you give us a sense of how remittances could help anticipate, for example, tropical cyclones? 500,000 people killed in your country a few decades ago. Can remittances be structured in a way that can help people do things before the shock happens?
You are absolutely right. You know, remittance. Of course, we need a community approach. You know, and this report also talks about the community approach. If the community can really build up a rice bank in the rural areas, so that they can put some rice there. So if a disaster hits, they can take it from there, and the remittance probably can play a role in the wealthy in a diaspora can really help their community in terms of sending some money for this kind of activities. But in addition, we are supporting lot of green banking. We have a green banking, as I said, department, and we are doing a lot of green banking initiatives in terms of telling the banks to have a partnership with an NGO or a campaign group, so that they can build up schools at the remote areas where nobody goes. That can be used as a shelter as well, and this is happening in a Sundarban itself. There is no good place, a good source of drinking water. So I have asked the banks to help those areas to provide saline-free water through different kind of technologically based, and they are doing that. So that's how we as a central bank, we are like beacons. We are giving the light, so others should then follow this. These are the approaches. But again, these are only our salads and desserts. Our main course is, of course, monetary policy, of course, our controlling inflation, of course, stabilizing our exchange rates. But again, if we do this kind of, if we take more salads and desserts, we become more healthy. That's it.
Governor, thank you.